Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Janelle Green, podiatrist and whole foods plant-based nutrition coach. Look, and I will not be stopped. I am here today with Miss Melanie Truesdale. She is a plant-based health coach at Truly Plant-Based. And so, Melanie, would you like to tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yes. Hi, Janelle. How are you?
Good.
Good. So, my name is Melanie Truesdale, and my company name is Truly Plant-Based, and I'm certified plant-based health coach and a professional plant-based cook, and I help caregivers eliminate chronic stress and maintain optimal health while caregiving, because those two things are imperative if you're a caregiver: eliminating stress and maintaining your health. So that is what we do for our clients.
Exciting. Look, and I cannot wait to dig into, this morning we're going to talk to you about the difference between acute stress and chronic stress, and just talk about ways that stress affects caregivers and how it makes them at increased risk for certain conditions and lifestyle diseases like type 2 diabetes, which is my focus. And for those of you all that don't know, I help people with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes realize their potential to prevent all of the complications that go along with having uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. Of course, amputations, because I'm a podiatrist, but also blindness, dialysis, and memory loss is also something that can happen when people have uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. So without further ado, let's get into this talk. So
Okay.
tell me a little bit more about the positive and negative effects, or the pros and cons of being a caregiver.
Okay. I'm just going to address some of the pros and cons that I've experienced, and sometimes I hear my clients speak of. For me, some of the pros of caregiving for me was that I got to spend a lot more time with my loved one, and our bonds strengthened, and we grew closer to one another through caregiving, through their illness and care, and my caregiving. And I look at that as a positive, because I probably wouldn't have had that experience had I not been caregiving for them. The other thing is just the satisfaction and of feeling good, that I was able to be there and support my loved one. And that gave me a sense of satisfaction. Also, throughout the process as a caregiver, you you need lots of resources. And through searching for my resources, I built up a lot of communities of people, invaluable relationships. And I learned another thing is I learned a whole lot about myself that I didn't know, good and bad. And also, I learned to be more accepting of others, and seeing people through a different lens. And on a negative, or the cons of caregiving for me, was the physical and mental burnout, the isolation, feeling alone, and many times not supported, the buildup of resentment, and financial issues, because a lot of times that comes with caregiving.
Look, yes, I know all firsthand of that. And so, like, I really value and appreciate this topic. And one of the things that I realized, and then just in listening to you talk as well, is that being a caregiver creates vulnerability, between you and the caregiver. And like you said, you get to grow and learn so much about yourself. And so one of the things that was really good for me that has come out of caregiving is learning how to set boundaries with people that I
Mhm.
love, that, I think, okay,
Mhm.
I should do anything for that person and be available all the time.
Mhm.
So what's one of the things, I guess, or something that some area that you grew in, or something that you learned about yourself that stands out as a caregiver?
Well, for me, that was the most challenging, because my parents that I was caring for when they were sick, this person, my mother, she had a health condition since childhood, since I was born. So in some respects, I was caregiving since I've like what I could recollect would me be 10 years old. I've been caregiving in some sense because she was sick. And
Mm-hmm.
so setting boundaries was really challenging because I grew up in that environment, and you can become codependent,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know how to separate your needs from the other one. You become kind of enmeshed. So setting
Mm-hmm.
boundaries was really difficult. And with my experience and speaking to other caregivers, I noticed a pattern that usually caregivers in some aspect prior to caregiving, they were kind of the people pleaser, or the one who was the caregiver in their relationships and other respects, and a different kind of dynamic. So it could be something that's very much ingrained, and setting boundaries can be challenging, and it requires a lot of self-development and maybe some therapy to for some to separate the two, and learning to say no and setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have a question, but before we get into that, so what's the difference between acute stress and chronic stress? Because you mentioned that you've been a caregiver since you were 10 years old. So, that's a long time to, have to care for someone other than yourself. And especially with that being your mom, that can,
Mhm.
create stress, even in a child. Like I look at my
Yeah.
own children who are also caregivers. They're 7 and 11 years old, and they function as caregivers, to their grandmother, and they did to their grandfather as well. So what's the difference between acute and chronic stress?
Mhm. So acute stress is usually short term, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be an isolated incident, or it could be a short term incident that creates stress in the body, or it could be chronic stress, which would be a long term stress, such as caregiving, and that
Mm-hmm.
would be 3 months or longer for chronic stress. And so it can have an impact on you, because when you're stressed, and stress is not only bad, it can be good too.
Mm-hmm.
We have experiences where we experience stress, and it's a positive thing. And that's why our bodies are made to handle stress. But over time, it can create problems and illness in the body over a long period of time, because when we're under stress, our body hormones are elevated, our cortisol and our adrenaline hormones. And when that happens, we go into a fight or flight. Our body goes into a fight or flight state, preparing for whatever that stressful event may be. And so then the physiological things that are going on, we have physiological changes in the body. Our heart beats faster. Our blood uh, uh, goes out to our limbs, because we may, from the center of our body to our limbs, because we may have to run. So our body's going through different changes. And when those changes stay elevated and they don't never subside, then we can develop chronic disease.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And another thing is sometimes people will get steroid or cortisone injections for different health reasons. Maybe they might have arthritis, or maybe they might have some lung disease that causes them to need steroids orally, by mouth. But one of the things that we're always concerned about, in the healthcare field is, man, how is this going to elevate the person's blood sugar? And so those same hormones that you might inject into your body or take orally, our body makes them, and that can create an environment, just that, like you said, that adrenaline and cortisol, to elevate your blood sugars. And then you talk about how blood flows from our natural organs, from our center of our bodies to our extremities. When that happens, our immune system is also lowered, so that makes us at risk for other certain infections. So
Yes.
definitely, it can have a detrimental effect on the body. And like you said, there are some situations where you do need stress to help you run faster, but to have that consistent stress over a long period of time, which is more than 3 months, that's how you define chronic stress, that can have a negative effect on the body. So you talk about
Definitely.
some of the the lifestyle diseases, or the fact that lifestyle diseases can arise from chronic stress. What are some of those lifestyle diseases?
A few that come to mind are high blood pressure, lot of digestive issues. Find that caregivers deal with a lot of digestive issues, stroke, obesity, and diabetes. Your specialty. I mean, I guess you can elaborate on that because that's up your alley,
Yeah.
but diabetes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I already said, chronic stress, it lowers your immune system, it elevates your cortisol, adrenaline, makes your blood sugars go up immediately. And so when that happens, when your blood sugars goes up, your immune system goes down, you're more likely to get infection, but you're also more likely to be in a position of making unhealthy choices when you're under a lot of stress.
Definitely, definitely.
And that cycle of these unhealthy behavior, and you're under a lot of stress, impairs your ability to think properly, to have emotional intelligence, and to really think through some situations in order to make healthy choices into what you eat, and in terms of how you think, or whether you decide you're going to get off the couch, and go exercise,
Mhm.
or, do some physical activity. So what do you think about that? And how do you help people in those situations? I see you over there nodding your head and you're like,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree with you. I agree with you. As both of us, we're plant-based health coaches. Diet does play an important part in chronic stress and as well as when you're caregiving, because when we're chronically stressed, we tend to reach for foods that comfort us, or also certain foods
Mm-hmm.
like sugar can give you a dopamine hit or enhance your pleasure senses. So you tend to reach for these foods. You also can wind up making impulsive decisions, and sometimes through the process of caregiving, you can make poor decisions in uh, relationships too, holding on to toxic relationships, a whole host of things. It's just making, you may reach for recreational, some people reach for recreational drugs, alcohol, smoking. So it can really impact the choices you make, the chronic stress and caregiving, because you're trying to find some type of relief
Mm-hmm.
and you're using these things and it's impulsive, it's something quick. And so you tend to reach for these type of things.
Did you tend to reach for?
You tend to reach for these types of things for comfort, and then sometimes you're isolated, the isolation. So you may stay in toxic situations, or you may uh, drink more, or all types of decisions you make as a caregiver because of the different things you experience, such as lack of time, the isolation, lack of social connections, the depression, watching your loved one deteriorate. So you can tend to reach for these things to feel better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I want to make sure, are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. And so one of the things that we talk about in our community of coaches is eliminating stress, eliminating disease. If it's not working for you, let's not manage disease. Let's not manage sickness. Let's not manage the problem. Let's get rid of it. And so as
Exactly.
you and I, we're talking a little before this, let's discuss, is it realistic as a caregiver to eliminate this chronic stress?
Well, when we talked the other day, I was thinking, I wonder if it really is. But then, I was listening back on a replay of our coach, that what our coach was talking about. And I think it is possible, and then you and I, for our clients, we create exit strategies, and that means eliminating the stress, not managing it. And that's the what I prefer doing, because when I think of managing stress, it reminds me of our healthcare system, how they manage different chronic lifestyle diseases. And then they're just uh putting a bandage on it, or to speak, or they just manage it so the person to get through it. But the patients, they want to get rid of it. They don't want to just manage that situation. So when I think of exit strategy, I prefer the approach of finding an exit strategy, a permanent solution. And that could even, and when we talked about it in our coaching class, what I thought about is being prepared for being able to have in some senses have an exit strategy. It doesn't have to be you wait until the situation falls in your lap, you know. So I was thinking about how we can create some strategies when we're not in a state of immediate crisis or problem, such as having our finances get together, have our financial situation
Mm-hmm.
together, having insurances in place, having
Mm-hmm.
that touchy conversation with our aging parents about what they have in place. We not waiting
Mm-hmm.
until the crisis just falls into your lap. And that way, when it does come up, you can um, be proactive in going forward with your exit strategies. But exit strategies, I think you can create exit strategies as a caregiver.
Mm-hmm. And what is this? Have you heard the saying? Is I don't know if it's being unprepared makes piss poor performance. It's something like that. Have you ever heard that?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, but it's along the lines of what you're saying. And as you were talking, it just kind of made me think about, when you're saying getting your finances in order. So if you get you're driving and you get a flat tire, if you don't have the money to get it repaired, of course, that makes for a very stressful situation. But if you have the money set aside, then it's easy to just, drive it in, get it replaced, and then you move about your day. And so that is an
Mhm,
opportunity right there. That situation is stressful. If you have the money,
mhm.
it can be an acute stressful situation and acutely stressful. But if you don't,
Exactly.
it turns into chronic stress. And next thing you know,
Mhm,
it's like, oh, how am I going to get to work? Or how am I going to take the kids to school? And then, it could be a week later and you're still trying to in this stressful situation. So
mhm.
absolutely being
And
prepared, having your mm-hmm,
yeah, I agree with you totally. And having your finances, in order is important because I think in any stage of our life, we're going to come to the point where we're going to be caregivers. Even when you become a parent, you're in the sense of caregiver. So I think it's important because a lot of times I find with caregivers, once they're thrown into that, a lot of times you're thrown into that role unexpectedly and you have to make changes. Sometimes your loved one requires 24-hour care or a lot of care, and you have to cut down your work hours or you have to work less, and then you find yourself in a financial situation. So it's something even as a younger person that should be considered, I think. And what came to mind from one of the classes we had was the coach asked this question, and I had to look at myself with this. It says, he asked, who are you holding responsible for getting over this stressor or for the stressor? And when I look back at that, I was thinking, I said, you know what? And then you find yourself in a situation, and a lot of times you will feel, oh, there's no way out. I'm in this situation. I'm a caregiver. You may have a disabled child. So that's lifelong. And you may say, well, there's no way out of this because this is my lot in life or my situation. There's no way out. And then when I thought about that question, who are you holding responsible for the stressor? And I found out, I was holding my caregiver, the person that my loved one, as the reason why. And so when I looked at it in the context as I'm responsible, it's my responsibility, um, assigning myself the responsibility, then I looked at it a different way because I was no longer held captive to that. And then my mind could think of other ways to be creative to still live my life and enjoy the things that I wanted to enjoy. So it's really caregiving and exit strategies and thriving as a caregiver is really a mindset. But
Oh, I'm
it can
just
look
sitting over
hopeless. It
here.
can look hopeless, you know?
Mhm. It can. And I'm sitting over here just jumping. I love that question. Are you able to hear me, or do I need to press
Yes,
pause?
yes.
No,
Uh-huh.
I absolutely love that. Who am I holding responsible for my stress? And like you said, it frees up your brain to be creative and to come up with creative solutions. I recently had a conversation with someone who is a caregiver for her children. She's caring for her children, and she's like, I got to spend so much time with them, helping them with homework and this. I don't have time to take care of myself. And in that sense, she's holding them responsible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not
Yeah,
fair to her. It's not fair
yeah,
to them,
yeah.
and when,
Mm-hmm.
we release that person, it frees us up. Because I'm thinking about, in terms of with the mindset and going with the whole idea of being prepared for situations, whether they be financial, but they also could be situations where you need to eat, right? You're going to need to eat every day unless you are on a fasting plan. Um you and so prepare by having an apple, or having some peanut butter,
Right.
or having a healthy snack, things that you can just put in your bag and or cut up and just have sitting out. If you're going to be sitting with the person that I'm caring for, we're going to watch a movie. Don't wait until you get into that moment. Like, have things on hand that can help you to be successful. So preparation is key. And then
Right.
also setting boundaries, right? And like I talked about, setting aside a time to, whether it be to pray, whether it be to meditate, whether it be to go for a walk by yourself. And sometimes you have to pay for people to help you care for your loved ones so that you can get a break. Fortunately, in a lot of communities, they do have organizations that offer free respite care, which
Mm-hmm.
has been, beneficial, especially when, I was going through finding care for my mom, and then my dad got really sick. And it's like, okay, caregiving is very expensive. And I'm like, I need all of these caregivers, and I didn't even know where to
Right.
turn. And so it's important to use your community, like you said, use the resources. But you have to have the mindset to even get to that place. You have to have the brain to help you to be creative, and to help you to focus on what you can control. Because as caregivers, like we've talked about, you can't control everything. You can't force your loved one to eat a certain way, or to engage in physical activity, or to do or not do certain things that we know may hurt them. So we have to kind of let that go. When we let that go, that also relieves us of chronic stress as well. So this is really good.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I was thinking again about that sign of responsibility, because even with aged parents, sometimes, when you say, "Oh, I got to do this, I can do that," and they see that and they feel that, and that makes them feel, that they're a burden and stuff like that. So, just taking that back and owning the responsibility for your own life and finding ways to, like you said, cope and resources and things like that.
Okay, so the answer to the question is yes. As a caregiver,
Yes,
you can eliminate chronic stress. It's all about being prepared. It's all about acknowledging who is responsible for your chronic stress and being
exactly.
responsible with that, not blaming it on the person that you're caring for, but taking responsibility for that.
Yes, that can alleviate a lot of stress. And I think so, depression as well, because when you keep blaming the situation on a person, then you'll sink into that depressive state because you don't see a way out. And so that frees you up, I think, mentally as well. And then you can see the light a little bit down a tunnel, and still engage in things that bring you joy, because then you can be able to find
Mm-hmm.
exit strategies. And I think it's great, us as health coaches, because sometimes people are in that state where they can't see. a way out. And
Mhm.
as health coaches, we help them to, we guide them in that direction, help them to create exit strategies and see a light at the end of the tunnel. So a coach can be really invaluable in that sense.
Hmm. Exactly. A coach can be very valuable in that sense. And we really have to, and this is something that I had to learn as well, understand, this is something our coach says, the conditions in which we thrive in, and realize as well, look, I'm good at some things, but I'm not good at what needs to be done, right? We have to understand that. And
Yes.
so when that happens, we have to pay somebody to help us get through those times. So we may need to pay for a therapist, we may need to pay for a coach, we may need to pay for a personal trainer at the gym. So you need to invest your money into taking care of the things that you need.
Mhm. Yeah. Invest in as much in yourself as you are your loved ones, because you're just important, it's just as important. And what you said reminds me of like me, you know, letting things go and focusing on what you can control. Because I when I was caregiving, at one point I had to have my hands in everything and I had to control the situation. I had to deal with the doc, I had to do this and I had to do that. But letting go of the control, help me to focus on, it can help you to focus on your own mental health. And it gave me, just knowing that, it gave me a sense of empowerment that that I could, instead of letting that go, you think letting go of the control, like you said, is going to leave you vulnerable. You don't have control, but it really gives you a sense of empowerment because I was able to then focus on myself and the things that I wanted. And I wasn't so focused on the caregiving, the whole thing of caregiving. And it took me out of that space. So letting go of control for me was a hard one, but it opens up your light, brings light into the room, so to
Yes, it
speak.
brings light into the room. And you talked about joy as well. You talked about joy. Can you talk about how you find humor in caregiving and how that can help to eliminate chronic stress?
Yeah, humor is great. And if you ask like some people who are close to me or my kids, when I'm really, really tired, I get real silly and and I start being crazy. And you gotta find humor in things. And like me, I mostly watch like comedies. I like funny stuff because it gives me something to laugh about. Sometimes I say, I'm gonna watch something funny before I go to bed, just to keep my positive energy up. And I had a friend, she died during COVID, and she was my best friend. And we would always be together. We'd laugh. If something terrible happened, we'd make a joke out of it and we create a whole scenario. And we just have a ball. And it helps to keep your mind uh not keep that dark state off of you. So I think having a sense of humor is great, not taking yourself so seriously. Like I could find, now being a caregiver so long, I could find the funniest things and stuff that people wouldn't laugh at. So I think it's great to have a sense of humor. Needed.
Nice. Nice. So, one of the things in my coaching program that I like to start my clients off with is helping them to develop what I call a routine, and a rhythm for the morning. Because I
Mhm.
think when you get up in the morning, that is the best and the part of your day where you set your intention, you get your mind right, and it allows you to pave the way for how the rest of your day is going. And so for those people that are caregivers, what advice would you give to them about what they can do in the morning, something that they can do consistently in the morning to help them have a good day?
Well, some people are night people. They don't like morning, but when you're a caregiver, you have to change that mindset. You got to become an early morning person and get to bed early so that you can get up early. I'm still working on that, but sometimes I get to bed late. But going to bed early so your body get that rest and getting up early. For me, the first thing I do, after I go brush my teeth, I read my Bible. I do Bible study, and I'm blessed. I have a congregation that's are so supportive, and we support one another, and we have meetings every week. So I study for my meetings. I do personal Bible study. I pray, and that gives me off to a great start. It helps me to feel calm. It helps me to know I'm not alone going forward in the day. So that's the first thing I do. I address my spirituality. And then, like, the water is essential. When you're a caregiver, that's like number one, because you can easily become dehydrated as a caregiver. I used to, before in caregiving, I would go the whole day, wouldn't have my first sip of water till like 6 in the evening. And you
Wow.
become dehydrated, and that affects your health in so many different ways. And so drinking that water, don't leave the house without it, because you could get so engaged in caregiving activities, you don't stop, and you're not hydrating yourself or nurturing yourself. So the water. I like to do my exercise in the morning, because there's no way in the world, after I caregive all day, there's no way I'm going to the gym or I'm going to pick up a weight. So I like to exercise in the morning. And those three things, uh, feeding my body, feeding my spirit, my body.
Thank you so much for sharing some of the um, practices that people can incorporate first thing in the morning in order to help them deal with their lives as caregivers. What are some other things that they can do?
I think it's important to learn how to ask for help and to delegate. And even if sometimes, when I was caregiving, I'd ask for help and then they wouldn't come through for me. And then I get the attitude, well, you know what? I'm not asking nobody. I'm gonna do it myself. But don't do that. Keep asking for help. Find help wherever you can, and keep asking for help, and learn to delegate and not take everything on yourself. And I also want
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah, no, and
Mhm.
I was just going to say, and then just accept it. People, one of the things I've had to learn is people do the best that they can. Not everybody is equipped to be a caregiver. And so, and
Mhm.
for many reasons, it may be physical, it may be emotional, maybe they just don't have the stomach for it or whatever. So just really accepting, where people are at, and that really believing the best in people, that they're doing the best that they can.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, and
Mhm.
the other thing I want to talk about is accepting the unpredictable, like expect the unexpected, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in.
Mhm.
And doing like I said, I learned so much about myself that I didn't know, and it's like learning how to accept the unpredictability of caregiving, and how you and work on yourself. Maybe therapy is needed, or to work on your emotional intelligence, how you respond to the unpredictableness, because
Mhm.
sometimes we can make impulsive decisions or say things, and because it's a tense situation with caregiving, it's hard for the loved one, and it's stressful for the caregiver as well. Words may be spoken, so working on emotional intelligence and how you deal with the unpredictable. It's
Absolutely.
tough.
That is so
Mhm.
necessary, dealing with the unpredictable. Look, we've had to do that this morning. And and it can be a challenge, but
Yeah.
like you said earlier, and that's one of the things that's sticking with me, is just doing your best to be prepared. And dealing with the unpredictable and laughing and being able to find humor in that. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. And also the last thing is, don't lose yourself in caregiving. If you have hobbies you enjoy, keep doing your hobbies, and you can find ways to continue that, or some of your personal goals. And again, that's how a health coach can help, because sometimes we can't figure out how to fit it all in or maneuver it. But don't give up the things you love just because you're caregiving. That's
mhm.
about it.
Okay. Thank you. And did you have any questions for me?
I did, because my mother passed away from complications of diabetes. And so I like for you to share um, how chronic stress and diabetes, how can we manage that? how can I had it down here. I wanted to ask you, what can a person with type 2 diabetes do to lower their sugars and when they're dealing with chronic stress? How can they manage that when they're the two? How do they correlate and how can they manage that?
Yeah. So earlier, we talked a little bit about the correlation between elevated amounts of cortisol and adrenaline in the body, and how that can contribute to elevated hemoglobin A1C. It can contribute to lowering your immune system. And so those are ways that chronic stress can contribute to lifestyle diseases. But one of the things that you touched on that is all about mindset. Like you and I know it's about mindset. Is really anyone with type 2 diabetes first has to be honest with themselves about, well, get the knowledge. I would say get the knowledge and understand that type 2 diabetes is not something that's a part of your DNA. It's not inherited. And so really understanding that is fundamental. Also understanding that you have type 2 diabetes and uncontrolled type 2 diabetes because of things that you are doing. And that can be hard for people to accept. It can be really hard for people to accept that things that they are doing are contributing to. Do you hear an echo?
No.
Okay, that there are things that they are doing that can contribute to them having a sickness. And that can be hard. But having the mindset to understand those things, and then finally having the mindset that I can be healthy, I can lower my hemoglobin A1C, I can lower my daily blood sugars. I've seen it happen for other people. So you need to surround yourself in communities where people are doing this. And that might be listening to a podcast, getting a coach, but you need to see people making it happen and achieving this goal for themselves. And then having the vision, creating a vision for yourself of your life without elevated blood sugar. So seeing and believing that it can happen for you. And so a lot of it is mindset. So once you've gone through all of that, once you've accepted the fact that this is not a part of my DNA, there are things that I am doing that are contributing to me having an elevated blood sugar. There are things that are contributing to me having this increased amount of stress. There are people in my community that are lowering their blood sugars and getting it right. There are people that are doing it, and I can do it too. So that's like all that's happening up here. And then, some other things are, going back to our conversation, being prepared. So knowing that if you are going to be in a situation where food is around, having something that you can eating before you go so that you're not starving, when you go into your family's house where they have the collard greens with the sugar and the fat back. And, maybe they might have some turkey in it. The turkey is not going to make it healthier. Okay. Where they have all of that in there, you're going over there, they have the mac and cheese and they have the ribs and all of that. You're going there, you're going to be around that. So if it's a situation that you can't avoid, because sometimes we just need to say, you know what, I can't go to auntie's house right now. It's too hard for me. So I'll go in, I'll say hi, and then I'll leave. I'll come back, after the food, is done. Or you eat beforehand so that you are satiated and satisfied. So you don't go in salivating, and then you can enjoy yourself a little bit better. And then you can maybe have a snack or something healthier to eat on hand. In addition to that, physical activity is something that I always encourage. Having 30 minutes of physical activity every single day will help to lower your blood sugars. It's important, as we both promote a whole foods, plant-based diet. Studies have shown that this is one of the most beneficial ways to extend healthy life expectancy, to lower blood sugar, and to reverse type 2 diabetes. People that don't consume animal products have the opportunity to add 13 years of life to their existing lives when you remove animal products from your diet. And not only, a life living where you are sick all the time, but like I said, a life that is healthy, where you're thriving, where you're living and you're able to do things that you want to do. Also keeping in mind that when you do consume a plant-based diet, you are dilating your blood vessels. So those foods that you eat is medicine. It dilates your blood vessels, and that's super important for somebody that has type 2 diabetes, because you are at an increased risk of heart disease. You are at an increased risk of amputation. And that amputation, of course, at first it starts out in the lower extremity as a wound. A lot of times the wounds won't heal because of infection, because there's too much pressure, on the area. Maybe you're walking on it when you shouldn't. And then blood flow. And so consuming a diet rich in plant-based products, fruits and vegetables can help to improve blood flow, can help to improve your immune system, and can help to heal your wounds so that you're not, putting yourself at risk of an amputation. So for those of people that, my people that I work with that do have ulcers, I strongly encourage them and promote a whole foods plant-based diet if they want to get this wound healed and not progress to an amputation. Those are some of the things that, some things that I encourage: adoption of a plant-based diet. Intermittent fasting is also something that is really helpful. A lot of people do a 16-8. Okay, so you have 16 hours where you're not eating, which includes the time when you're sleeping, and then you get up in the morning and you don't eat any food. I do encourage people to drink water, so room temperature water with lemon throughout the fasting period. And then at noon, you have your window where you are eating food, and you want to make sure that you eat foods that are rich in fiber. So anybody that has, I say it's people with type 2 diabetes, but everybody should be consuming 30 grams of fiber in their diet every single day, right? Fiber, not fire. Fiber also helps to, in the long run, lower your blood sugars. So one of the great examples that I like to give is that, for someone who, for example, they might have had lentils for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And then they go for lunch and then they have a banana. Well, because they had those lentils for breakfast and that fiber for breakfast, when they have that banana, their blood sugar is not going to spike as high as it would if someone had, maybe coffee and orange juice and a pancake. They had a coffee and orange juice and a pancake for breakfast, and then they go and have a banana for lunch. At lunchtime, after that banana, their blood sugars are going to be higher than the person who had the lentils or something high in fiber. And so just, I like to help people. People will always ask, well, where can I get my fiber? And I'm like, every plant, fruits and vegetables, they all have fiber. There's some that have more fiber than not. But that was a big eye opener for me, because I grew up thinking, well, in order to get fiber, I have to eat prunes. Like that was that was it. That was the only thing about getting fiber. Right. So now I know, you can get fiber from beans, greens, and there's different types of fiber. And so for a lot of people that consume the standard American diet, we aren't used to getting that amount of fiber in our diets, even the basic amount of 30 grams daily. So we have to work our way up to that, because sometimes that can create an upset stomach if your body's not used to it. But in having type 2 diabetes, it is essential that you slowly work your way up to consuming a diet of fiber in the amount of 30 grams daily. And then also eliminating processed and refined sugar. That is huge. Understanding, just because it says sugar free on the front doesn't mean that it's absent of sugar, alcohols, and also things that can contribute to cancer, and then in addition to that, saturated fat is a big one. People are not aware that in order to keep your blood sugar low, you not only have to eliminate the processed and the refined sugars, and being able to identify them in things like your spaghetti sauce that you buy over the counter, or these different packaged things have sugar in them, but you also need to eliminate the saturated fat from your diet, because that saturated fat keeps your blood sugars, or the sugar in your blood, elevated. So the sugar in our blood, the glucose in our blood, needs to get into our muscle cells and our liver cells in order to function properly. Like we need glucose in order to move our eyelids and move our arms and yawn and, everywhere we have muscles. And so those muscles need that glucose. But if we have a diet high in saturated fat, then instead of that glucose getting to where it needs to be, it hangs out in our blood and our blood sugar gets elevated. And so people that have uncontrolled type 2 diabetes really need to take seriously the idea of eliminating saturated fats from the diet through the consumption of meat, eggs, and dairy. Those are all very high in saturated fat. So that's the summary. That's what I would say. And so, if all of that sounds scary to you, it can be scary, but that's, you get a coach, you get help, you realize, what you're good at. Like I said, I'm good at, some things, but I'm not good at everything. Right. And so you get somebody to help you along the process.
That's great information. You said people, it seems like very daunting or scary, but you can really make some really good food, limiting the salt, oil, saturated fat, and sugar. You'd be surprised.
Absolutely. You'd be surprised. And then the other thing I think, Melanie, that is important that we talk about is that people need to understand that our taste buds have been hijacked. Right. And so that's another thing, is that you have to change your taste buds, because the amount of sugar that is in everything from our toothpaste to the juice to the spaghetti sauce to the people sometimes have no idea the amount of sugar that they're consuming throughout the day.
Yes.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
give them the fruit and they're like, oh, this doesn't taste sweet.
Right, right.
But there's different things that you can do to help people along that process. But I have always loved to eat, and I still love to eat. And that's why I enjoy a plant-based diet, because like you said, there's so many different things that you can cook. It's all about seasoning. I tell people nobody's cutting open a cow or a chicken and taking it out and eating it like that. Nobody's doing
Right,
that.
right.
Nobody's just taking it. No, you got to season that thing, right? And so you just learn.
Process.
Yeah, you learn how to season your fruits and your vegetables and prepare them in a way that's flavor to you, and your nuts and seeds and legumes and beans and all of that.
Great, great. I love it.
Yes. Well,
Definitely.
thank you.
Good
Thank you so
information.
much, Mel. Thank you for this was fun.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed the collaboration.
Yeah.
We are going to end now. Would you like to tell people where they can find you?
Okay, again,
What's your
the name of
email?
my email is hello at trulyplantbased.com, and it's spelled Truely, not Trully. It's Truely. You can also find me on my YouTube channel at Truly Plant Based, and on Instagram at Truly Plant Based.
Very, very good. And I am Dr. Janelle Green. You can find me at dr.janelle, JANELLE, GREEN@gmail.com. And I'm also on Instagram as Dr. Janelle Green, the plant-based podiatrist.
Thank you, Janelle. This
All
was
right.
great.
I am going
Thank
to
you so
end.
much.